Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, two legendary centers who towered over the NBA in the 1950s and 1960s, engaged in one of the most iconic rivalries in sports history. Their battles weren't just about size or numbers, but about clashing philosophies and styles that shaped the direction of professional basketball for decades. Each man was revered for his skills, yet their career arcs became intertwined in a narrative of contrasting teams, contrasting methods, and a constant tension between individual brilliance and collective triumph. To grasp the magnitude of their rivalry, it's crucial to recognize where each came from. Bill Russell arrived in the NBA in 1956 as the new defensive linchpin of the Boston Celtics. Under head coach Red Auerbach, the Celtics revolutionized the game with a defense-first mentality, using Russell's shot blocking, rebounding, and leadership as the anchor of a fast-break offense. Though slender and unassuming, Russell commanded the paint with a strategic and fearless approach that favored timing and anticipation over brute strength. Soon after his debut, Boston launched into an era of dominance, winning multiple championships on the back of Russell's defensive presence and intangible impact. Then came Wilt Chamberlain, signing with the Philadelphia Warriors, later the San Francisco Warriors, in 1959. Standing at a towering 7 feet 1 inch, Chamberlain was a force the NBA had never seen, an offensive juggernaut who shattered scoring and rebounding records almost immediately. Nicknamed the Big Dipper, he was blessed with physical gifts, enormous hands, tremendous strength, and mobility for his size, making him virtually unstoppable one-on-one. Among his countless eye-popping feats was his averaging over 50 points for an entire season, and his legendary 100-point game in March 1962. Fans marveled at his superhuman stats, while opposing players often felt helpless. In the public eye, it was inevitable that Russell versus Chamberlain became the talk of the NBA. They faced off regularly, their matchup central to the league's marquee game. Yet the differences went beyond personal talent. Russell's Celtics prioritized teamwork, defense, and a culture where no one individual overshadowed the system. Wilt's teams often relied heavily on his scoring. If he didn't produce astronomical numbers, critics argued his squads had little chance. Curiously, for all his scoring prowess, Wilt struggled to find the same postseason success as Russell. Whenever the Celtics and Chamberlain-led teams collided in the playoffs, the results consistently tilted in Boston's favor. While Chamberlain piled up personal accolades, Russell amassed championship rings. It's too simplistic, though, to claim that Wilt was purely about ego-driven statistics. Over time, Chamberlain altered his game, focusing more on passing and defense. In the late 1960s, after stints with the Warriors and the Philadelphia 76ers, where he did capture a long-awaited title in 1967, he joined the Los Angeles Lakers. Meanwhile, Russell continued as the backbone of a Celtics dynasty that, from 1957 to 1969, captured 11 championships. The narrative of team success versus individual stardom followed them everywhere. Russell became a symbol of ultimate team play and ironclad defense, while Wilt was the quintessential unstoppable scorer, and, in many eyes, a tragic hero who lacked the supporting cast or strategic blueprint to match Boston's ring count. Their personal relationship was layered. Off the court, they shared a mutual respect, even friendship, though professional pride and media hype often pitted them against each other in the public's mind. Fans argued ceaselessly over who was truly superior. Chamberlain's staggering numbers led some to call him the greatest center ever. Russell's incredible championship resume made others insist that his intangible leadership and will to win made him the ultimate competitor. In reality, both men pushed each other to refine their respective games. Their duels were must-see events, featuring epic rebounding battles and physical confrontations at the rim, a stark contrast to the faster-paced, guard-oriented basketball that would develop in later eras. Between 1959 and 1969, they met many times in decisive playoff series. The most discussed remains the 1969 Finals, with Russell on the brink of retirement and Chamberlain, by then a Laker, hoping to dethrone Boston once and for all. Even with Wilt's imposing presence and the Lakers' star-studded roster, which included Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, the Celtics eked out yet another historic Game 7 victory, capping Russell's final game with one last champion. This heartbreak for Chamberlain magnified the pattern. Over their careers, Russell's teams outdid Wilt's when everything was on the line. Their rivalry extended beyond basketball tactics to cultural and social impact. Both men were prominent black athletes navigating racial tensions in the United States. Russell's outspoken stance against discrimination and Wilt's flamboyant persona each contributed to broader discussions on race, celebrity, and activism in pro sports. Although their stances weren't always identical, they shared common ground as groundbreaking figures in an era where African American players were still battling for equality and recognition. When Russell retired in 1969, the league lost one half of this storied rivalry, though Chamberlain continued playing until 1973. The question of who was better lingered. Even now, Decades after their final duels, debates persist. Some highlight Russell's 11 rings in 13 seasons as irrefutable proof of his supremacy, while others argue that Wilt's monstrous stats, such as averaging 50 points per game, grabbing 55 rebounds in a single outing, make him the more dominant force. The truth, of course, lies somewhere in the interplay of the two. Each exposed the other's weaknesses, each forced the other to elevate. The NBA's evolution might have unfolded very differently had neither man existed to challenge the other. In historical retrospective, the Russell-Wilt rivalry occupies a mythic dimension, akin to Magic versus Bird or Michael Jordan versus the entire league in the 1990s. Yet it stands out for the sheer contrast in approach. One man quietly anchored the greatest dynasty pro basketball has seen, while the other performed outlandish individual feats unmatched to this day. Their duels pulled attention away from the standard East-West storyline by spotlighting the fierce big man battles in the paint. Scoring versus defense, rings versus records, subtlety versus spectacle. It made for compelling drama. Even as the NBA grew and introduced three-point shooting, faster tempo, and new stars, historians keep returning to Russell versus Wilt. Their matchups shaped how future centers, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and later Hakeem Olajuwon, developed their games, combining shot blocking, rebounding, scoring, and court vision. Without the heated competition between Russell and Chamberlain, the league might not have evolved toward the versatile pivot men of modern time. In the end, the Russell-Chamberlain rivalry is about more than who scored more or collected more championship rings. It's about the synergy of two forces that, by their very opposition, elevated the sport. Russell showed that selflessness, defense, and an unrelenting will can produce dynastic dominance. Chamberlain embodied the astonishing heights of individual talent, blazing new trails in offensive production. Although the scoreboard of rings ended in Russell's favor, fans and critics still wonder how Wilt's legacy might have been different if the Celtics hadn't assembled such a perfect team ecosystem. Regardless of which giant one prefers, their legendary head-to-head battles remain a testament to the richness of NBA history and the idea that rivalries spark extraordinary performance. Each man found in the other a reason to strive harder, adapt, and transcend perceived limits. Decades later, that echo continues. Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, two unstoppable forces whose clashes and contrasts redefined basketball forever.